I never thought a piece of crumpled paper would save my life. Let me say that again, because even now, 2 years later, I still can't quite believe it myself. A doctor I'd only met 3 times before slipped a note into my purse while my husband waited in the lobby, and those 7 words, "Run from your husband now," shattered everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my safety, and the man I'd shared a bed with for 6 years. But I'm getting ahead of myself. If you're watching this from anywhere in the world, drop a comment below and let me know where you're tuning in from. I want to know my story is reaching people who need to hear it. And please, check the description box below for more stories like this one. Stories of survival, revenge, and women who refuse to stay silent. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and this is the story of how I discovered my husband was slowly poisoning me. It started on a Tuesday morning in late September, the kind of morning where the air smells like dying leaves and pumpkin spice, and everyone in Portland, Oregon is wearing their first flannel of the season. I was 32 years old, working as a marketing consultant from home, and I'd been feeling like absolute garbage for months. Dizzy spells. Nausea that came in waves. Hair falling out in clumps in the shower. A tremor in my hands that made it hard to type sometimes. My skin had this grayish tint that no amount of concealer could hide. My husband, Marcus, tall, charming Marcus with his perfect smile and his job at the pharmaceutical company, had been so concerned. So attentive. He'd made all my doctor's appointments himself, driven me to each one, sat in the waiting room with his laptop open, working on presentations while I got poked and prodded and tested for everything under the sun. The doctors couldn't find anything wrong. Thyroid? Normal. Blood work? Mostly normal, except for some slightly elevated liver enzymes, but nothing alarming. MRI? Clean. They'd started suggesting it might be stress, anxiety, maybe early onset perimenopause. One doctor had actually recommended I try yoga and meditation. I'd wanted to throw my medical chart at his head. Dr. Rebecca Chen was different from the start. She was the 4th specialist I'd seen, a toxicologist that my primary care doctor had finally referred me to when nothing else made sense. She was maybe 45, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and this way of listening that made you feel like she was actually hearing you, not just waiting for you to stop talking so she could give you her diagnosis. That Tuesday was my 3rd appointment with her. Marcus had driven me, same as always. He'd kissed my forehead in the parking lot and told me he'd wait in the lobby, that he had some emails to catch up on. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have a husband who cared so much, who never complained about all the medical appointments, who held my hair back when I vomited and rubbed my feet when the muscle cramps got bad. God, I was so stupid. Dr. Chen ran the usual tests during that appointment. Blood pressure, reflexes, the works. But this time, she asked me different questions. Questions about my daily routine. What I ate for breakfast. Whether anyone else in my house was sick. How long I'd been married. Where my husband worked. If you've ever been in a situation where someone asks you a question and suddenly your entire world tilts sideways, you know exactly how I felt when she asked about Marcus's job. He works for Meridian Pharmaceuticals, I told her, proud as anything. He's a senior research associate. He's been there for 8 years. Something flickered across her face. Just for a second. Then it was gone. She finished the examination, told me she wanted to run a few more specialized tests, and asked me to wait in the room for a moment while she checked on something. Marcus was still in the lobby. I could see him through the small window in the door, his head bent over his phone, fingers flying across the screen. Dr. Chen came back 5 minutes later with a folder of paperwork and my prescription refills. She went over everything in her usual thorough way, explaining dosages and potential side effects. Then, as she was gathering up her things, she knocked my purse off the chair. It was clumsy, unlike her. Papers and lip gloss and receipts scattered across the floor. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she said, dropping to her knees to help me pick everything up. That's when I felt it. Her fingers pressing something small and hard into my palm, closing my fingers around it. Her eyes met mine for just a fraction of a second, and in them I saw something I couldn't quite name. Fear. Urgency. A warning. She stood up, smiled her professional smile, and told me her nurse would schedule my follow-up appointment. Then she left. I waited until I was in the car, Marcus driving us home through Portland's lunch hour traffic, before I uncurled my fingers and looked at what she'd given me. It was a sticky note, folded into a tiny square. Her handwriting was barely legible, scrawled like she'd written it in a panic. "Run from your husband now." The exclamation point was underlined 3 times. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands started shaking, the real kind of shaking, not the tremor I'd gotten used to. I shoved the note deep into my jacket pocket before Marcus could notice anything was wrong. "You okay, babe?" he asked, glancing over at me. "You look pale." "Just tired," I managed to say. It was a long appointment. He reached over and squeezed my knee. His hand was warm, familiar, the same hand that had slipped a diamond ring on my finger 6 years ago in a sunset ceremony on Cannon Beach. The same hand that held mine during my father's funeral. The same hand that brought me tea every night before bed, a special blend he made himself with honey and lemon because he knew I loved it. The same hand that, according to Dr. Chen's note, I needed to run from. That night, I couldn't eat dinner. Marcus had made my favorite, his famous chicken piccata with garlic roasted vegetables. He'd even opened a bottle of the expensive Pinot Grigio we saved for special occasions. "What's the occasion?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "No occasion," he said, smiling that smile that used to make my heart skip. "I just love you. Can't a husband spoil his wife?" He poured me a glass of wine, set it in front of me, watched me with those warm brown eyes. I picked up the glass, brought it to my lips, and something in my brain screamed at me to stop. I pretended to take a sip, letting the wine barely touch my lips, then set the glass down. "Actually, you know what? My stomach's been weird all day. Maybe I should skip the wine." "You sure? It might help you relax." "I'm sure." Was it my imagination, or did his smile falter for just a second? We ate dinner mostly in silence. I pushed food around my plate, managed to swallow a few bites, watched Marcus from the corner of my eye. He seemed normal. Completely normal. Told me about his day at work, about a project that was giving him trouble, about his co-worker Derek who just announced his wife was pregnant. He was the same man I'd been married to for 6 years. The same man I'd dated for 2 years before that. The same man who'd swept me off my feet at a coffee shop in the Pearl District when I was 24 and stupid and thought I knew what love was. After dinner, he made me tea. My special tea. I watched him in the kitchen from my spot on the couch, watched him fill the kettle, grab my favorite mug, the one with the Portland skyline on it that he'd gotten me for our anniversary, watched him add the tea bag and the honey. And then I watched him glance toward the living room, checking to see if I was looking. I wasn't. Or at least, he thought I wasn't. He pulled a small vial from his pocket. So quick I almost missed it. Tapped something into the mug. Stirred. Put the vial back. My heart stopped. Actually stopped. I thought I might pass out right there on the couch, but I forced myself to breathe, to stay calm, to smile when he brought me the mug with that concerned husband expression on his face. "Here you go, sweetheart. Nice and hot, just how you like it." I took the mug. Felt the warmth seep into my palms. Looked down at the amber liquid that was supposed to make me feel better, supposed to help me sleep, supposed to be a gesture of love from my husband. "Thank you," I whispered. He kissed the top of my head. "Anything for you, babe. You know that." I waited until he went upstairs to take a shower. Then I dumped the entire mug into the kitchen sink, watching the tea swirl down the drain. I rinsed it 3 times. 4 times. 5 times. Then I went to the bathroom, locked the door, pulled out Dr. Chen's note, and read it again in the harsh fluorescent light. "Run from your husband now." That night, I discovered the doctor had just saved my life. And I started planning my revenge. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? The man in bed next to me, snoring softly with one arm thrown across his pillow, had just tried to poison me. Again. Because if he'd done it tonight, he'd done it before. Probably every night. Maybe every morning. Maybe in my food, my drinks, my vitamins. My vitamins. The thought hit me like a freight train at 3 in the morning. I'd been taking these special supplements Marcus had ordered for me online about 8 months ago. He'd said they were specifically formulated for women with chronic fatigue and hormone imbalances. Expensive stuff, he'd told me. He'd seemed so proud to have found them, so happy to help me feel better. They'd arrived in an unmarked bottle with a label that looked professional enough. I'd been taking 2 every morning with breakfast, just like he'd told me to. 8 months ago was when I'd really started feeling sick. I laid there in the dark, listening to Marcus breathe, and tried to remember what my life had been like before. Had I always been this tired? No. A year ago, I'd been running 3 times a week, meeting clients in person, having wine nights with my best friend Jenna. I'd had energy. I'd had color in my cheeks. I'd had a future. What did I have now? A body that was failing me piece by piece. A husband who was helping it along. But why? That was the question that kept me awake while the clock ticked past 4, past 5. Why would Marcus want to hurt me? We didn't have a bad marriage. We didn't fight. We had sex regularly, or we had, until I'd gotten too sick to want it. Our finances were combined, sure, but we both made decent money. I didn't have any life insurance policies he'd benefit from. At least, I didn't think I did. Unless I did, and I just didn't know about it. The thought made my skin crawl. As soon as the first light started creeping through our bedroom curtains, I pretended to be asleep. Marcus's alarm went off at 6:30, same as always. He shut it off, climbed out of bed, padded to the bathroom. I heard the shower start. I waited 30 seconds. Then I got up and went to his home office. Marcus kept his office locked when he wasn't using it. He said it was because he sometimes brought work home that was confidential, proprietary research for Meridian Pharmaceuticals that he could get fired for disclosing. I'd never questioned it before. Why would I? I trusted him. God, that word. Trusted. I tried the door handle. Locked, as expected. But Marcus wasn't a careful man when it came to keys. He kept a spare on his keyring, which was currently sitting on the kitchen counter next to his wallet and his work badge. My hands were shaking as I grabbed the keys and ran back upstairs. The shower was still going. I had maybe 5 minutes. The office door opened with a soft click. If you're watching this and you've ever had that moment where you know you're about to find something that will change everything, hit the subscribe button. Trust me, you're going to want to follow this story to the end. And check out the description for more stories about women who discovered the truth just in time. Marcus's office was neat, organized, exactly like him. Everything had its place. His desk was positioned in front of the window overlooking our backyard, his laptop closed on the polished surface. Filing cabinets lined one wall. A bookshelf with medical textbooks and pharmaceutical journals lined another. I went straight for the filing cabinet. The top drawer was labeled Work Documents. Research papers, meeting notes, drug trials, nothing that seemed relevant. The second drawer was Personal Finance. Tax returns, investment statements, bank records. I pulled out our most recent bank statements, the ones from the joint account we'd set up when we got married. Everything looked normal at first glance. Mortgage payment. Utilities. Groceries. His paycheck deposited every 2 weeks. My irregular deposits from freelance work. Then I saw it. Monthly payments to something called Silverline Insurance Services. $500. Every single month for the past 3 years. I'd never heard of Silverline Insurance Services. The shower shut off. I had maybe 2 minutes now, probably less. I snapped photos of the bank statements with my phone, shoved them back in the drawer, and moved to the third one. This one was labeled Medical. Inside were files. So many files. Some were mine, my medical records from the last year, test results, doctor's notes. But there were others. Research papers about arsenic poisoning. About thallium. About symptoms of chronic heavy metal exposure. about how to make poisoning look like natural illness. My throat closed up. I couldn't breathe. There was a notebook at the bottom of the drawer. I grabbed it, flipped it open. It was a journal. Marcus's handwriting, neat and precise. Week 12. Sarah's hair loss is becoming more noticeable. She started wearing it up more often to hide it. The tremors in her hands are progressing on schedule. She mentioned feeling dizzy yesterday afternoon. All symptoms align with expectations. Week 18. Increased the dose slightly. Need to be careful not to accelerate too quickly. The goal is slow deterioration, not acute poisoning. Acute would trigger the wrong kind of investigation. Week 24. Sarah's primary care doctor is useless. Exactly as I predicted. He's already suggesting anxiety and stress. Perfect. The psychiatric angle will be helpful later for the narrative. I heard Marcus's footsteps on the stairs. I shoved the notebook back, slammed the drawer closed as quietly as I could, and ran. I barely made it back to the bedroom before he walked out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, hair wet. "You're up early," he said, smiling at me. I forced myself to smile back. Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd get some work done. "How are you feeling today?" He asked it with such genuine-sounding concern. Such perfect fake worry. "About the same," I said. "Did you take your vitamins yesterday?" I noticed the bottle seemed full. Oh God. He was tracking whether I took them. I did. I lied. Must have just looked that way. He nodded, seemingly satisfied, and went to get dressed for work. I went downstairs, made coffee with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, and tried to figure out what the hell I was going to do. The obvious answer was to go to the police. Right? That's what any normal person would do. Take the journal, take the bank statements, take Dr. Chen's note, and walk into a police station and tell them my husband was poisoning me. But I knew what would happen. I'd seen enough crime shows, read enough articles. Without concrete proof, without actual poison in my system or in my food, without a clear motive, without anything more than a journal that could be explained away as research notes for one of Marcus's pharmaceutical projects, it would be my word against his. And Marcus was charming. Marcus was convincing. Marcus worked for a respected pharmaceutical company and had never so much as gotten a parking ticket. Who would they believe? The successful research associate, or his sick, paranoid wife? No. Going to the police wasn't enough. Not yet. I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. And I needed to know why. I pulled out my phone and called Jenna. We'd been best friends since college, had been in each other's weddings, told each other everything. Or at least, we had until I'd gotten too sick to keep up with our friendship the way I used to. "Sarah." She answered on the second ring, sounding surprised. "Hey, stranger. What's up?" "I need your help," I said quietly. "And I need you not to ask questions yet." "Okay." Her voice shifted immediately, going serious. "What do you need?" "Can I come stay with you for a few days? Starting today." "Of course." "Sarah, what's going on? Are you okay?" "I will be," I said. "I hope I will be. I'll explain everything when I see you. Can you pick me up? I don't want to drive." "I'll be there in an hour." After we hung up, I went upstairs and started packing a bag. Not too much. I didn't want to tip Marcus off that I was leaving for more than a few days. Just some clothes, my laptop, my phone charger, my toothbrush. I left the vitamins in the medicine cabinet. Marcus had already left for work by the time I came back downstairs. He'd left a note on the counter in his neat handwriting. "Hope you feel better today, sweetheart. I'll pick up dinner on the way home. Love you, M." I stared at that note for a long time. Love you. Did he love me? Had he ever loved me? Or had this always been the plan? Marry me, poison me slowly, watch me deteriorate, and then, what? Cash in on whatever insurance policy he'd taken out? Play the grieving widower. I took a photo of the note. Evidence. Everything was evidence now. When Jenna pulled up in her beat-up Honda Civic, I grabbed my bag and left. Didn't look back at the house. Didn't leave Marcus a note. Just walked out of my marriage and into the beginning of whatever came next. In the car, Jenna looked at me with worried eyes. You look terrible, Sarah. I know. Are you going to tell me what's happening? My husband is poisoning me, I said. And I'm going to destroy him for it. Her face went white. What? Just drive, Jen. Please. I'll explain everything. But first, I need to make a phone call. I pulled out Dr. Chen's business card and dialed her office number. The receptionist told me she was with a patient, but I said it was urgent, that I was a patient of hers and it was an emergency. 3 minutes later, Dr. Chen's voice came on the line. Sarah, she said quietly, you got my note. I got it. And I need to know everything you know. Not over the phone. Can you come to my office? After hours, say 7 tonight. I'll be there. Good. And Sarah, I'm glad you got out. Now we need to make sure you stay out. Dr. Rebecca Chen's office looked different at 7 p.m. with the lights dimmed and the waiting room empty. The cheerful teal walls that seemed so calming during the day now felt eerie, like the set of a movie where something bad was about to happen. Jenna had wanted to come with me, but I'd made her stay at her apartment. This was something I needed to do alone. Plus, if Marcus somehow found out where I was staying, I didn't want her directly involved. Not yet. Not until I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Dr. Chen opened the door herself instead of having her receptionist buzz me in. She looked tired, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, her white coat replaced with jeans and a sweater. Human. Normal. Not like someone who just appended my entire life with 7 words on a sticky note. Thank you for coming, she said, locking the door behind me. Let's talk in my office. Her private office was small but comfortable, filled with plants and framed photos of what I assumed was her family, a husband, 2 kids, a golden retriever. Normal life things. The kind of life I'd thought I had. I need you to understand something before we start, Dr. Chen said, sitting across from me. What I did, giving you that note, I could lose my medical license for it. I violated about a dozen different protocols. But I couldn't let you walk out of here without warning you. How did you know? I asked. About Marcus. She pulled a file from her desk drawer. My file. It took me a while to piece it together. The first time I saw you, 8 weeks ago, your symptoms were concerning but not necessarily suspicious. Fatigue, nausea, tremors, hair loss, they could indicate any number of conditions. But your blood work showed some anomalies that didn't quite fit the pattern of any specific disease. She opened the file, showed me charts and numbers that meant nothing to me. Your liver enzymes were elevated, but not drastically. You had slightly elevated levels of certain proteins that suggested your body was trying to fight off something toxic. But the standard toxicology screen came back negative. So what changed? You did. Or rather, your story did. The second time you came in, you were worse. Significantly worse than you should have been after just 4 weeks. The progression was too rapid, too calculated. And when I asked about your personal life, you mentioned your husband's job at Meridian Pharmaceuticals. She paused, and something dark crossed her face. I used to work for Meridian, she continued. Early in my career, about 15 years ago. I left because I didn't agree with some of their research practices. They were, one of the leading companies in toxicology research. They develop treatments for poisoning victims, which means they have extensive knowledge about poisons themselves. My stomach turned. Marcus has access to poisons. Not just access. Expertise. If someone from Meridian wanted to poison someone slowly, methodically, in a way that would be almost impossible to detect with standard medical testing, they would know exactly how to do it. But you detected it. Only because I ran specialized tests that most doctors wouldn't think to order. Tests that specifically look for exotic compounds and heavy metals that aren't part of a standard tox screen. She pulled out another sheet of paper. Your third visit, I drew extra blood without telling you. I sent it to a private lab I trust, asked them to test for things that made my suspicions sound paranoid. She slid the paper across the desk to me. The results came back yesterday. You have elevated levels of thallium in your system. Not enough to kill you quickly, but more than enough to cause every single symptom you've been experiencing. And thallium is one of the compounds that Meridian uses in their research. Thallium. I'd heard of it vaguely, something about it being a poison, but I didn't know the details. It's called the poisoner's poison, Dr. Chen explained. Colorless, tasteless, odorless. In the mid-20th century, it was actually used as a murder weapon so frequently that its use was heavily restricted. But research labs like Meridian still have access to it for legitimate scientific purposes. So Marcus has been putting thallium in my food. In something you consume regularly. Based on your timeline, I'd guess he started about 8 months ago, around the time your symptoms began. Small doses, probably daily. Enough to make you sick, but not so much that it would show up on standard tests or kill you quickly enough to raise immediate suspicion. I felt like I was going to throw up. Why would he do this? That, I can't answer. But in my experience, when someone poisons their spouse slowly over months, it's usually about money. Life insurance. Inheritance. Sometimes it's about control, or revenge for some perceived wrong. Sometimes it's just because they want out of the marriage but don't want to deal with divorce. We don't have kids, I said quietly. Our finances are pretty separate, actually. We have the joint account for household stuff, but we each kept our own savings from before we got married. I don't have a trust fund or rich relatives or anything like that. But you have life insurance. I mean, I think so. I have the basic policy through my previous employer, but I've been freelance for 3 years, so I'm not even sure if it's still active. Maybe $50,000? Marcus never mentioned getting additional policies or anything. Even as I said it, I remembered the bank statements. Silverline Insurance Services. $500 a month for 3 years. $18,000 in premiums. He took out a policy on me, I said slowly. Without telling me. There were payments in our joint account to an insurance company I'd never heard of. Dr. Chen nodded grimly. That would make sense. Depending on the policy amount, $500 a month could get him anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million in coverage. Maybe more. $1 million. My life was worth $1 million to my husband. Or rather, my death was. What do I do? I asked. My voice sounded small, broken. The police won't do anything without more proof, will they? Probably not. You'd need concrete evidence, the poison itself, proof that he purchased it or had access to it outside of work, some kind of confession or documentation of intent. What you have now is circumstantial. His journal entries could theoretically be about a research project. The insurance policy could have been something he set up and forgot to mention. The thallium in your blood could theoretically have come from environmental exposure, though that's unlikely. So he gets away with it. Not necessarily. Dr. Chen leaned forward. I've been thinking about this since I gave you that note. There's someone you need to talk to. Her name is Amanda Voss, and 3 years ago, her husband died of what was ruled natural causes after a long illness. She's convinced he was murdered by someone at Meridian Pharmaceuticals, but she's never been able to prove it. My skin prickled. You think Marcus killed someone before? I think it's worth finding out. Amanda's husband, Richard, worked at Meridian with your husband. They were colleagues. And Richard's illness and death sound remarkably similar to what's been happening to you. She pulled out a business card and wrote a phone number on the back. Call her. Tell her I sent you. And Sarah. Dr. Chen's eyes met mine, and I saw the same urgency from that day in her examination room. Whatever you decide to do, Be careful. If Marcus realizes you know, if he feels cornered or exposed, he might escalate. Right now, he thinks his plan is working. Keep it that way until you're ready to move. I took the card with trembling fingers. Thank you for saving my life. Thank me when this is over and he's behind bars. I left her office with more questions than answers, but at least now I had a direction. I had proof that I was being poisoned. I had a potential connection to another victim. And I had something I hadn't had before: rage. Pure, crystallized rage. Marcus had spent 8 months slowly killing me. He'd held me while I vomited, rubbed my back while I cried about how scared I was, told me we'd figure out what was wrong together. He'd looked me in the eyes and lied every single day, while he fed me poison and waited for me to die. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, you know that specific kind of pain. It's not like a punch to the gut, it's worse. It's like someone reaching inside your chest and squeezing your heart until you can't breathe. Drop a comment if you know exactly what I mean. And make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next is going to blow your mind. Back at Jenna's apartment, I called the number Dr. Chen had given me. Amanda Voss answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting by the phone. Hello. Hi, my name is Sarah Mitchell. Dr. Rebecca Chen gave me your number. She said you might be able to help me with something. There was a long pause. Then, is this about Meridian Pharmaceuticals? Yes. And is someone you love dying slowly while doctors tell you there's nothing wrong? My throat closed up. Not someone I love, but someone who's supposed to love me. Your husband. Yes. Another pause. Can you meet tomorrow? There's a coffee shop in Lake Oswego called the Roasted Bean. Noon. I'll be there. Come alone, Amanda said. And Sarah, welcome to the club nobody wants to be in. She hung up before I could respond. I sat on Jenna's couch, staring at my phone, trying to process everything. My husband was poisoning me. He'd probably poisoned someone else before. He'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. And somewhere out there was a woman who'd already lived through the nightmare I was in the middle of. Jenna came out of her bedroom with 2 glasses of wine. I'm not supposed to drink, I said automatically. Honey, I don't think a glass of wine is your biggest health concern right now. She handed me a glass and sat down next to me. Talk to me. What did the doctor say? So I told her everything. The thallium. The insurance policy. Marcus's journal documenting my deterioration like I was a lab experiment. Amanda Voss and her dead husband. When I finished, Jenna was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "We're going to destroy him, right?" Absolutely. Good. Because I never liked him anyway. Despite everything, I almost laughed. You never told me that. You were happy. Or I thought you were. And he seemed, I don't know, perfect. But that was the problem. He was too perfect. Too charming. Too invested in being the ideal husband. It felt performative. It was performative. The whole thing was an act. So what's the plan? That was the question, wasn't it? What was the plan? I couldn't just go back home and pretend nothing was wrong. But I also couldn't run forever. And I couldn't let Marcus get away with this. First, I meet with Amanda Voss tomorrow and find out what happened to her husband. Then I figure out how to prove Marcus is guilty. And then... I paused, took a sip of wine. Then I make him pay for every single day he spent poisoning me. I'm in, Jenna said immediately. Whatever you need. I'm in. This could get messy. Messy is my middle name. It wasn't, obviously. Her middle name was Marie. But I appreciated the sentiment. That night, I lay in Jenna's guest room, staring at the ceiling, and made myself a promise. Marcus thought he was so smart, so careful, so perfectly in control. He thought he'd gotten away with murder once and was about to do it again. He was wrong. I was going to take everything from him, the way he'd tried to take everything from me. My health, my trust, my life. And I was going to make sure he knew exactly who beat him. The Roasted Bean was the kind of coffee shop that shows up in Portland travel guides, exposed brick walls, local art for sale, baristas with elaborate tattoo sleeves. I arrived 15 minutes early, ordered a black coffee I had no intention of drinking, and sat in the back corner where I could see the entrance. I'd barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marcus's face. That smile. Those concerned eyes. The way he'd kiss my forehead before leaving for work. How many times had he kissed me right after dosing my food with poison? How many times had he held me while I cried about being sick, knowing he was the reason why? Amanda Voss walked in at noon exactly. I recognized her immediately, even though Dr. Chen hadn't shown me a photo. She had that look, the one I'd been seeing in my own mirror for months. Hollowed out. Like someone had scooped out all the soft parts and left only the shell. She was maybe 40, with dark hair pulled into a ponytail and circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. She ordered tea, scanned the coffee shop, and our eyes met. She knew who I was, too. Maybe it was the same hollowed-out look. Maybe we could just recognize each other now, members of this horrible club. "Sarah," she asked, approaching my table. "Amanda. Thank you for meeting me." She sat down across from me, wrapped both hands around her tea mug like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "Dr. Chen told me about you. About what your husband is doing. She said your husband died. That you think someone from Meridian killed him." "I don't think. I know." Her voice was flat, matter-of-fact. "Richard was murdered. And the man responsible is still walking around free, working at that godforsaken company, probably planning his next victim." "Tell me what happened." Amanda took a sip of her tea, and I saw her hands were shaking slightly. "Richard and I were married for 12 years. We met in college, got married young, did the whole traditional thing. He was a pharmaceutical researcher, brilliant at what he did. Meridian recruited him right out of grad school." She paused, staring into her tea like she could see her past reflected there. "About 4 years ago, Richard started getting sick. Same as you, fatigue, nausea, tremors, hair loss. He'd come home from work exhausted, barely able to keep his eyes open through dinner. We saw doctor after doctor. They ran every test imaginable. Found nothing." "How long did it go on?" 18 months. 18 months of watching my husband deteriorate. Toward the end, he couldn't work anymore. He was bedridden most days, could barely keep food down. The doctors said it was some kind of autoimmune condition they couldn't identify. They put him on steroids, immunosuppressants, all kinds of medications. Nothing helped. Her voice cracked, and she cleared her throat hard. "He died on a Tuesday morning. I found him in bed, just gone. The autopsy said his organs had failed. Liver, kidneys, everything just shut down. They ruled it death by natural causes, complications from his undiagnosed illness. Case closed." "But you didn't believe that." "I couldn't. Richard was 38 years old and had been perfectly healthy until suddenly he wasn't. And there were things that didn't add up. Little things that haunted me." She pulled out her phone, scrolled through some photos, and showed me one. A handsome man with kind eyes and a wide smile, his arm around Amanda at what looked like a beach somewhere. This was Richard 6 months before he got sick. Does he look like someone whose organs are about to fail? He didn't. He looked healthy, happy, alive. After he died, I was going through his things, his work files, his laptop, his papers. And I found a journal. Not a diary, more like notes. Research notes about a project he'd been working on at Meridian. Amanda pulled a folded stack of papers from her purse and slid them across the table. Photocopies of handwritten notes in neat, precise handwriting. He'd been investigating something. Some kind of off-books research happening at the company. He thought someone was using company resources for unauthorized experiments. He wrote about anomalies in the chemical inventory, about substances going missing and being covered up in the logs. I scanned the pages. Chemical names I didn't recognize. Dates. Quantities. And then, circled multiple times, thallium sulfate, 15G unaccounted. My blood ran cold. He was onto something, Amanda continued. Something someone didn't want discovered. And 2 weeks after he made that last entry about the missing thallium, he got sick. Did you take this to the police? Of course I did. They said it was interesting but not proof of anything. The chemicals could have been used for legitimate research. The missing inventory could have been a clerical error. Richard's illness could have been coincidental. Without proof that someone had actually poisoned him, without the poison itself, it was just speculation. They didn't test for thallium during the autopsy. No. Why would they? They were looking for natural causes. And by the time I found Richard's notes and started putting things together, he'd been cremated. There was nothing left to test. She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much grief, too much injustice. So I started digging on my own. I got Richard's personnel records, found out who he'd been working with, who had access to the labs where those chemicals were stored. And one name kept coming up over and over again. I already knew what she was going to say. Marcus Mitchell. Your husband. The coffee shop suddenly felt too hot, too crowded, too loud. I thought I might pass out. Marcus and Richard worked on the same research team, Amanda said. They had access to the same labs, the same chemicals. Richard had written in his notes that he tried to talk to Marcus about the missing inventory, that Marcus had told him not to worry about it, that he'd look into it himself. And then Richard died. And then Richard died. We sat in silence for a moment. Around us, people ordered lattes and pastries, tapped away on laptops, had normal conversations about normal things. They had no idea that 2 women were sitting in the corner, talking about murder. There's more, Amanda said quietly. After Richard died, I hired a private investigator. Cost me almost everything I had left, but I needed answers. He found out that Marcus had taken out a life insurance policy on Richard. My stomach dropped. What? How is that possible? You can't just take out insurance on random people. You can if you're listed as a business partner. Apparently, Marcus and Richard had formed an LLC together a year before Richard died, some kind of consulting company they were supposedly going to start on the side. It never went anywhere, but it was legitimate enough that Marcus could take out a key person insurance policy naming himself as the beneficiary. How much? $750,000. Paid out 3 months after Richard's death. $750,000. For murdering his colleague. And now he was trying the same thing with me. His wife. Probably for even more money. Why didn't the insurance company investigate? I asked. They did a basic investigation, but Richard's death was ruled natural causes. There was no reason for them to suspect fraud. Marcus provided all the right documentation, answered all their questions, and collected his payout. Clean and legal. Except it wasn't clean. It was murder. Exactly. But try proving that. I tried, Sarah. For 3 years, I've been trying. I talked to lawyers, detectives, journalists. Nobody would touch it. Not enough evidence. Too circumstantial. And Marcus is smart, he's careful. He knows exactly how to stay just on the right side of plausible deniability. I thought about Marcus's journal, about the methodical way he'd documented my deterioration. He's done this before, I said slowly. Maybe more than once. This is too calculated, too perfect. You don't just randomly decide to poison your business partner and then later your wife. This is a pattern. That's what I think, too. But I've never been able to find any other victims. Either they're out there and I haven't found them, or they're dead and nobody connected the dots. Amanda reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Her grip was tight, desperate. But you're alive, Sarah. You figured it out in time. You have something I'll never have, a chance to stop him. A chance to prove what he is.
How?
How do I prove it when you couldn't? Because you're not dead yet. Because you can control what you eat, what you drink, what evidence you collect. Because he doesn't know that you know. Her eyes were fierce now, burning with 3 years of frustrated grief and rage. You can catch him in the act. You can get the proof that I never could. You want me to let him keep trying to poison me. I want you to document him doing it. Video evidence. Physical evidence of the poison. A clear chain of custody. Something that can't be explained away or dismissed as circumstantial. My heart was pounding. That's dangerous. What if he figures out what I'm doing? What if he escalates? Then you make sure you're ready. You set up safeguards. You get people watching your back. But Sarah. She squeezed my hand harder. This is your shot. Maybe the only shot anyone will ever get to stop him. To make him pay for Richard, for you, for whoever else might be next. I pulled my hand back, wrapped it around my cold coffee cup. Everything Amanda was saying made sense, but it also terrified me. Going back to that house, to that man, knowing what he was capable of, it felt like walking into a lion's den. But she was right. I was alive. I had figured it out in time. And I had something else, too. I had rage. Enough rage to fuel whatever came next. If I do this, I said slowly, I need to know everything you know about Marcus. Every detail. Everything your private investigator found. All of Richard's notes. Everything. Amanda smiled for the first time since she'd sat down. It was a grim smile, but genuine. I thought you might say that. I have boxes of files in my car. Everything I've collected for the past 3 years. It's yours. We spent the next 2 hours in Amanda's car, going through papers and photos and documents. She'd built an entire case file on Marcus, and reading through it was like watching a horror movie where you already know the ending. Marcus had joined Meridian Pharmaceuticals 9 years ago, fresh out of grad school with a specialty in toxicology. His performance reviews were glowing, brilliant, meticulous, innovative. He'd been promoted twice in 5 years. He and Richard had started working together 6 years ago on a research project involving heavy metal exposure treatments. That's when they'd formed their LLC, supposedly to consult on the side. The company had never done any actual business, but it existed on paper. Richard had gotten sick 5 years ago. Died 3.5 years ago. Marcus had collected his insurance payout 3 years ago. Marcus had met me 3 years and 2 months ago. The timeline made me nauseous. Had he targeted me specifically? Had he seen me at that coffee shop and thought, there's my next victim? Or had it been more opportunistic? He'd met someone, things had moved quickly, and then he'd realized he could do it again? There's something else, Amanda said, pulling out a different folder. This is from the last month. I've been keeping tabs on Marcus since I found out he got married. I wanted to warn you, but I didn't know how. What was I supposed to do? Send a random stranger an email saying, hey, your husband might be a murderer? What did you find? He's been accessing some of the same secure labs at Meridian that he accessed before Richard died. My investigator has a contact who works there, someone who owed Richard a favor. They've been monitoring Marcus's keycard access. She showed me a spreadsheet. Dates, times, lab numbers. Lab 7B is where they store controlled substances for research. Thallium, arsenic, other nasty things. Marcus accessed that lab 16 times in the past 6 months. His current project has nothing to do with heavy metals. 16 times. 16 times he'd gone into that lab, presumably to steal the poison that was slowly killing me. This is it, I breathed. This is the proof. It's a start. But you need more. You need to catch him with the poison outside of work. You need to document him putting it in your food. You need to build a case so airtight that no lawyer can explain it away. How do I do that without him knowing? Amanda pulled out one more item, a small box. Hidden cameras. My investigator uses them for surveillance. You can put them in your house, in your kitchen, wherever you need them. They're motion-activated, high definition, and they store everything to a cloud server that only you can access. I took the box with shaking hands. This was real now. This wasn't just investigation and planning. This was active engagement with a man who wanted me dead. One more thing, Amanda said. When you do this, when you go back there and start collecting evidence, don't do it alone. Make sure someone knows where you are at all times. Make sure you have an exit strategy. Make sure you're ready to run if things go sideways. I will. Good. She hugged me then, this stranger who understood my nightmare because she'd lived through her own. Destroy him, Sarah. For both of us. Make him pay for every life he's ruined. I drove back to Jenna's apartment with boxes of files in my trunk and a plan forming in my mind. I knew what I had to do now. It was dangerous, possibly insane, but it was the only way. I had to go home. Not permanently, not yet. But I had to make Marcus think I was coming back, that I just needed a few days away to clear my head, that everything was fine between us. I had to lull him back into that false sense of security. And while I was there, I had to turn our house into a surveillance operation that would capture every single move he made. That evening, I called Marcus for the first time since I'd left. He answered on the first ring. Sarah. Oh my God, baby, where are you? I've been so worried. I came home and you were just gone. No note, nothing. Are you okay? His voice was perfect. Concerned, loving, just the right amount of panic. If I hadn't known better, I would have believed every word. I'm sorry, I said, making my voice small and tired. I've been at Jenna's. I needed some space. I've been feeling so sick and so overwhelmed, and I didn't know how to tell you. Honey, you can always tell me anything. You know that. Please come home. We'll figure this out together. Together. Like we'd figured everything out together while he'd been slowly poisoning me. I will, I said. But I need a few more days. Is that okay? Of course. Take all the time you need. I just want you to feel better. Marcus. Yeah. I love you. The words tasted like poison in my mouth, but I needed him to believe them. I love you too, Sarah. So much. You're my whole world. After I hung up, I sat on Jenna's couch and cried. Not sad tears, angry tears. Frustrated tears. Tears of grief for the marriage I'd thought I had, the man I'd thought he was, the life I'd thought we were building. All of it was a lie. Every moment. Every smile. Every I love you. But I was going to make him pay. Check the description box below for more stories about women who fought back. You're going to want to see what happens next. 3 days later, I went home. Not alone, though. Jenna came with me, helped me carry in my overnight bag and a box of what looked like random stuff from her apartment but was actually surveillance equipment that Amanda's investigator had helped me set up the night before. Marcus was at work when we arrived. I'd timed it that way deliberately. I needed to set up the cameras before he got home, needed to make sure everything was in place. You're sure about this? Jenna asked as we stood in my kitchen, the kitchen where Marcus had made me countless meals laced with poison. The kitchen where he'd prepared my tea every night with such loving care. I'm sure. We got to work. The first camera went in the kitchen, hidden inside a decorative cookbook holder on the counter with a clear view of the stove, the counter where Marcus prepared food, and the cabinet where he kept his special ingredients. The second went in the living room, tucked behind a picture frame on the bookshelf. The third in our bedroom, inside a tissue box on the dresser. Amanda's investigator had given me 6 cameras total. They were tiny, professional grade, The kind private detectives use for catching cheating spouses. Now I was using them to catch a murderer. How do you know he won't find them? Jenna asked. I don't. But Marcus isn't paranoid. He thinks he's in complete control. He's not looking for cameras because he has no reason to think I suspect anything. We finished setting up just as my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Coming home early. Can't wait to see you, red heart hash. That's my cue to leave, Jenna said. She hugged me tight. Remember, if anything feels wrong, if you feel unsafe for even a second, you text me our code word and I'm calling the police. Our code word was pineapple. Because nothing about this situation was normal. So why should our panic code be? Jenna left through the back door just as I heard Marcus's car pull into the driveway. I positioned myself on the couch, trying to look like someone who'd just been resting, someone who was tired and sick but happy to be home. Not someone who'd spent the last 3 days planning her husband's downfall. The front door opened. Sarah. In here. He came into the living room, and I forced myself to look at him, really look at him. Marcus was objectively handsome. 6'2", athletic build from his regular gym sessions, dark hair with just a touch of premature grey at the temples that somehow made him look distinguished rather than old. He had the kind of face you'd trust immediately, the kind of smile that made you feel safe. It was all a mask. Everything about him was a carefully constructed lie. Hey, baby, he said, sitting down next to me on the couch. He cupped my face in his hands, looked into my eyes with such genuine seeming concern. I missed you so much. How are you feeling? Tired. But better, I think. Being at Jenna's was good. I needed the break. I understand. I'm just glad you're home. He kissed my forehead, and I had to stop myself from flinching. Are you hungry? I can make dinner. That would be nice. I watched him go into the kitchen, watched him on my phone, actually, because the camera app was already open in my lap, hidden from view. The camera quality was incredible. I could see everything in crystal clarity. Marcus opened the refrigerator, pulled out chicken and vegetables, started prepping dinner while humming to himself. He looked so normal, so domestic, like a loving husband making dinner for his sick wife. Then he glanced toward the living room, checking to see if I was watching. I kept my eyes on my phone, pretending to scroll through social media, while my heart hammered in my chest. He opened a cabinet. Not the normal spice cabinet, a different one, up high, where we kept things we rarely used. He pulled out a small bottle, unmarked, about the size of those travel-sized shampoo containers you get at hotels. He uncapped it, tapped something into the pan where he was sautéing vegetables. I had it. On video. Clear as day. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to get out of the house, to never eat another thing this man prepared ever again. But I needed more. One video of him adding something to food wasn't enough. He could claim it was a supplement, a vitamin, a special spice. I needed multiple instances. I needed proof of what was in that bottle. I needed an airtight case. So I sat there and waited for him to bring me a plate of poisoned food. Dinner's ready, Marcus called out 20 minutes later. I joined him at the dining room table. He'd made lemon chicken with roasted vegetables and rice, one of my favorite meals. He'd even lit candles and poured us each a glass of water. I wanted tonight to be special, he said. Welcome home. I looked down at my plate. The food looked delicious. Smelled amazing. And somewhere in it, mixed in with the lemon and garlic and herbs, was thallium. This looks incredible, I said. Thank you. Anything for you. I picked up my fork, pushed some rice around my plate, took a tiny bite of vegetables, so small it was barely anything, and I made sure to chew thoroughly and swallow quickly so there was minimal absorption. How is it? Marcus asked. Perfect. I watched him watch me eat. Or pretend to eat. I'd push food around, take tiny bites, drink water constantly to dilute anything I did consume. Every few minutes, I'd comment on how good it was, how much I appreciated him cooking for me. All while my stomach churned with revulsion. "You're not eating much," he observed after a while. "My appetite's still not great. But it's delicious, really." "Well, make sure you finish your water at least. You need to stay hydrated." "Right. The water." I'd almost forgotten about the water. I raised the glass to my lips, pretended to take a sip, but barely let any liquid into my mouth. When Marcus wasn't looking, I'd pour some into the potted plant next to the table. That plant was going to die, but it might save my life. After dinner, Marcus insisted on cleaning up while I went to rest on the couch. I watched him on the camera app as he scraped my mostly full plate into the garbage disposal, washed the dishes, and put everything away. Then he opened that cabinet again, pulled out the unmarked bottle, looked at it for a long moment, and I saw something cross his face that made my blood run cold. Satisfaction. Pride. Even. Like an artist admiring his work. He put the bottle back, closed the cabinet, and came to join me in the living room. "I have a surprise for you," he said. My heart stopped. "Oh." "I talked to my boss, took the rest of the week off. I want to take care of you, make sure you're getting better. We can just relax, watch movies, order in if you don't feel like me cooking. Whatever you want." He was taking time off work. To be home with me. To watch me. To make sure I was taking his poison. "That's so sweet," I managed to say. "But you don't have to." "I want to. You're the most important thing in my life, Sarah. Your health is my priority." That night, he made me tea. Of course he did. I watched through barely closed eyes as he added something from a small vial he kept in his pants pocket. Watched him stir it carefully, making sure it dissolved completely. Watched him bring it to me with that loving smile. "Here you go, sweetheart. This should help you sleep." I took the mug, held it, waited until he went upstairs to shower, then poured it into a plastic bottle I'd hidden behind the couch cushions earlier. Evidence. I sealed it, dated it, and hid it in a box of tampons in the bathroom cabinet. Men never look in those. This became my routine for the next 4 days. Marcus would make breakfast. I'd barely eat it and pocket what I could when he wasn't looking. He'd make lunch. I'd claim I wasn't hungry, that my stomach was upset. He'd make dinner. I'd push food around my plate and sneak it into napkins. He'd make tea. I'd collect it in bottles hidden throughout the house. Every single time, the cameras captured him adding something from that unmarked bottle or from the vial in his pocket. I was collecting evidence, building my case. But I was also starving. I'd sneak food when Marcus left the house. Protein bars I kept hidden in my car. Meals Jenna would drop off when she'd stop by to visit and Marcus would conveniently need to run an errand. I'd eat in the bathroom with the shower running. I'd eat in my car in the garage with the door closed. It was exhausting. Terrifying. But it was working. On the 5th day, something changed. Marcus came home from a quick trip to the store with a bag from the pharmacy. He seemed anxious. More animated than usual. "Hey, babe, I picked up those new vitamins my colleague recommended. He said they really helped his wife when she was going through something similar." He pulled out a bottle. Professional-looking label. Some brand name I didn't recognize. Natural Women's Health Support Formula. "That's sweet, but I already have vitamins," I said. "These are different. Specialized. Trust me, they'll help." He was pushing them. Really pushing them. "Why don't you start taking them tonight? Just 2 with dinner." That's when I knew. These weren't from a colleague. There was no colleague. This was escalation. These pills were probably loaded with enough thallium to finish the job faster. Maybe he was getting impatient. Maybe he thought I should be sicker by now. Maybe he was starting to suspect that I wasn't consuming as much of his carefully prepared poison as he thought. "Okay," I said. "I'll start them tonight." His relief was visible. "Great. I really think they'll make a difference." That evening, I took the 2 pills he gave me with dinner, made a big show of swallowing them with water. What Marcus didn't see was that I'd tucked them into my cheek, and the second he turned away, I spit them into my hand and shoved them into my pocket. I added them to my evidence collection. I'd have them tested later. But now I knew I was running out of time. Marcus was escalating. And if he realized I wasn't actually taking the poison, if he figured out what I was doing, things could get very dangerous very fast. I needed to move to the next phase. That night, after Marcus fell asleep, I snuck out to the garage with one of the plastic bottles of poison tea. I'd researched labs online that would do private testing, no questions asked. There was one in Seattle that specialized in forensic toxicology. They were used to getting samples from lawyers and private investigators. I packaged the tea sample, printed a label with a fake name, and marked it for overnight shipping. By tomorrow afternoon, they'd be testing it. In 3 days, I'd have concrete proof of what Marcus had been putting in my drinks. But I needed more than proof he was poisoning me. I needed proof he'd done it before. I needed to connect him to Richard Voss's death. The next morning, Marcus had a video call with work, something about a project deadline he couldn't miss even on his time off. He took it in his home office, door closed, while I stayed in the bedroom pretending to rest. The second I heard him start talking to his colleagues, I moved. I'd been waiting for this chance. Marcus kept his office locked, but I'd made a copy of his key days ago when he was in the shower. My hands shook as I slipped into the room, leaving the door cracked just enough that I could hear if his call ended early. His computer was locked, but I'd watched him type his password enough times to know it. Sarah 2019, the year we got married. The irony was almost funny. Almost. His email was open. I searched for Richard Voss's name. Dozens of emails came up. Work correspondence, mostly. Project updates, meeting notes, the kind of boring work stuff that fills everyone's inbox. But then I found a folder. Labeled RV, Personal. I opened it. The first email was from 5 years ago. Richard to Marcus, we need to talk about the inventory discrepancies. This isn't adding up. I'm going to HR if you don't have an explanation. Marcus's response, let's meet in person. Tomorrow, Lab 7B after hours. I can show you the logs, it's just a clerical error. The next email was 3 weeks later. Richard to Marcus, I don't feel right about staying silent on this. Those chemicals could be dangerous in the wrong hands. Marcus's response, trust me, everything is under control. Your health should be your priority right now. You've been looking tired lately. Maybe take some time off. Your health should be your priority right now. He'd said it to Richard weeks before Richard got sick. I kept scrolling. Found an email from Marcus to an insurance agent, dated 4.5 years ago. Looking to set up key person insurance for my business partner. What kind of coverage would you recommend? Found a policy document. $750,000. Found an email from Marcus to himself, dated 3 years and 3 months ago, 2 months after Richard died, 1 month after he'd collected the insurance payout. The subject line was just a single word, again. The body of the email was a list. A checklist. Meet someone suitable, professional, stable income, small social circle, no close family. Build trust, 18 to 24 months minimum. Establish caretaking role. Set up insurance, $1M plus policy, term life, accidental death. Begin treatment, low doses, gradual progression. Timeline, 18 to 24 months from start to finish. Document symptoms but stay concerned. When complete, wait 6 to 12 months before starting over. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't opportunistic. This wasn't even about me specifically. This was a business model. Marcus had turned murder into a systematic, repeatable process. Find a victim, marry them, poison them, collect the insurance, wait long enough to avoid suspicion, and do it again. How many times had he done this? Richard was the one we knew about, but was there someone before Richard? Would there have been someone after me? I heard Marcus laugh at something on his video call. The sound made my skin crawl. I copied every email, every document, every file in that folder onto a USB drive I'd brought with me. Then I searched his hard drive for anything else related to Richard, to Meridian's labs, to insurance policies. I found spreadsheets, financial projections, calculations of how much he could make if he did this every 4 years, how many times he'd need to do it before he could retire early, live comfortably, never work again. He'd been planning to kill me for 3 years. From the very beginning. Every date, every kiss, every I love you had been part of this plan. I'd never stood a chance. I heard his office chair creak. The call was ending. I ejected the USB drive, shoved it in my pocket, closed all the windows on his computer, and slipped out of the office. Made it back to the bedroom with maybe 30 seconds to spare before I heard Marcus's footsteps in the hall. "Sarah, you awake?" "Ahem. Just resting." He came in, sat on the edge of the bed, brushed my hair back from my face with such tenderness it made me want to scream. "How are you feeling?" "About the same." "Did you take your vitamins this morning?" "Yes." "I hadn't." "Good girl. I really think they're going to help." I looked up at him, this man who'd planned my death like a business transaction, and smiled. "I hope so. I'm ready to feel like myself again." "Soon," he said, leaning down to kiss my forehead. "Very soon." He meant dead. I'd be feeling like myself again when I was dead and he was cashing his check. That afternoon, while Marcus was at the grocery store, I called Amanda Voss. "I have it," I said without preamble. "Everything. Emails proving he planned Richard's murder. Financial documents showing he's done this as a business model. Video of him poisoning my food. Samples of the poison itself being tested. Amanda, I have everything." There was silence on the other end. Then, "Oh my God. I need to go to the police. But I need a lawyer first. Someone who specializes in this kind of thing, someone who can make sure the evidence is presented right, someone who can make sure he doesn't walk." "I know someone. A prosecutor I talked to back when Richard died. She believed me, but she said there wasn't enough evidence. If you have what you say you have, she'll take the case. She'll destroy him. Give me her number." Amanda did. I called immediately. Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Morrison listened to my story without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "How soon can you get me copies of everything?" "Tonight. But there's a problem. I'm living with him. He doesn't know I know. If I just disappear with all this evidence, he'll run." "No, he won't. Because we're not going to give him the chance. Here's what we're going to do." ADA Jennifer Morrison had a plan, and it was beautifully ruthless. "We need to catch him in the act with irrefutable evidence," she explained over the phone. "What you have is good, great, actually, but a defense attorney will argue that the emails could be about something else, that the videos don't clearly show what substance is adding, that the financial records show motive but not action. So what do we need? We need him to confess. On tape. And we need to catch him with the poison in his possession outside of his workplace." "How do I get him to confess?" "He thinks his plan is working perfectly. By making him think you're dying. By making him think he's won." The plan was insane. It was dangerous. It was also the only way to guarantee Marcus would end up in prison instead of walking away with some plea deal or reasonable doubt acquittal. Jennifer walked me through it step by step. I would go back to pretending to take the poison, actually taking small amounts, just enough to make symptoms reappear but not enough to cause serious harm. Dr. Chen would monitor my blood levels to make sure I stayed safe. Meanwhile, Jennifer would work with the police to set up surveillance, get warrants, coordinate the timing. "How long do I have to do this?" I asked. 2 weeks. Maybe 3. Just long enough for Marcus to think you're declining rapidly. Then you're going to collapse. We'll stage it so he thinks you're going into organ failure. And when he thinks you're too sick to understand what's happening, when he thinks he's finally getting what he wanted, that's when people get careless. That's when they talk. And if he doesn't talk, if he's too smart for that, then we move to plan B. But trust me, Sarah, I've been doing this for 15 years. Killers like Marcus, methodical, arrogant, convinced of their own genius, they all have the same weakness. They want credit for their work. They want someone to know how smart they are. And when they think their victim can't hurt them anymore, that's when they gloat. So that's what I did. I became the perfect dying wife. I started taking the vitamins Marcus gave me. Not both pills, just one, and only every other day. Just enough to make the symptoms real. Dr. Chen monitored my blood work twice a week, adjusting her recommendations for how much I should take based on my thallium levels. We were walking a tightrope, trying to seem sick enough to be convincing without actually dying in the process. The symptoms came back fast. The nausea, the exhaustion, the tremors. My hair started falling out again in the shower. My skin took on that grayish tint. Marcus was thrilled. Oh, he pretended to be concerned, pretended to be worried, but I could see it in his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. Satisfaction. Victory. Maybe we should go to the hospital, he'd suggest every few days, knowing I'd refuse. I always refused. Sarah Mitchell didn't like hospitals, didn't trust them after they'd failed to diagnose her for so long. Marcus had helped establish that narrative over months. I just need rest, I'd say, playing my part perfectly. The vitamins are helping, I can feel it. I just need time. Meanwhile, Jennifer and her team were building the case. They'd obtained warrants for Marcus's work records, his keycard access logs, his purchase history. They'd interviewed people at Meridian who remembered Richard Voss, who remembered the inventory discrepancies that had never been fully explained. They tracked down the LLC Marcus and Richard had formed, found the insurance policy, discovered that Marcus had done the exact same thing with another researcher 5 years before Richard. A woman named Catherine Brewer who died of undiagnosed autoimmune disorder at age 34. Marcus had collected $400,000 from that one. 3 victims. 3 murders. Probably more that we hadn't found yet. Amanda Voss came to visit me one afternoon, brought flowers and magazines like a normal friend would. Marcus was at work, so we could talk freely. Catherine Brewer, she said. I found her sister. She's willing to testify. She never believed the autoimmune diagnosis either. How many more do you think there are? I don't know. Maybe none. Maybe dozens. Jennifer's team is going through Marcus's financial records for the past 15 years, looking for any other insurance payouts, any other suspicious deaths. I looked at Amanda, this woman who'd become my unlikely partner in bringing down my husband. Do you think we're going to actually pull this off? Yes. Because we have something none of his other victims had. What's that? Time. You figured it out early enough to fight back. Catherine didn't. Richard didn't. But you did. And that's going to make all the difference. 2.5 weeks into the plan, Jennifer gave me the signal. It was time. Dr. Chen had prepared everything. She'd set up a private room at a hospital across town, one where she had privileges and could control who came in and out. Jennifer had arranged for plainclothes officers to be stationed nearby. We'd wired the room with audio and video equipment disguised as medical monitors. The trap was set. Now I just needed to walk into it. That morning, I woke up and didn't get out of bed. Sarah. Marcus came in, already dressed for work. You okay? I don't feel good, I whispered. I feel really bad, Marcus. Something's wrong. I'd taken 2 full pills the night before. Dr. Chen had cleared it, said it wouldn't kill me but it would make me genuinely sick enough to be convincing. She'd been right. I felt like death. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, felt my forehead. His expression shifted into what I recognized now as his concerned husband mask. You're burning up. And your pulse is racing. We need to get you to the hospital. No. No hospitals. Sarah, this isn't negotiable. You're really sick. Please, I just need to rest. Now, Sarah. We're going now. He called 911. Played the panicked husband perfectly. By the time the ambulance arrived, I was barely conscious, partly acting, partly genuinely feeling awful. They took me to the hospital. Not the one where Dr. Chen worked. That would have been too suspicious. They took me to the nearest emergency room, exactly like any normal emergency would go. Marcus rode in the ambulance with me, holding my hand, telling me everything would be okay. The ER doctors ran tests. Found elevated liver enzymes, signs of organ stress, all the markers of serious thallium poisoning. But not critical levels. Not yet. Dr. Chen had calibrated it perfectly. They admitted me, moved me to a room, started for fluids and ran more tests. And then, after 6 hours of waiting, a hospital administrator came in and spoke quietly to Marcus. Mr. Mitchell, we have a situation. We're at capacity, and we have critical patients who need this room. There's a hospital across town, Providence General, that has availability and, frankly, better equipment for cases like your wife's. We'd like to transfer her there, if you're agreeable. Marcus agreed immediately. Of course he did. A transfer meant confusion, new doctors who didn't know the case, opportunities for things to go wrong. Opportunities for his dying wife to slip through the cracks. Providence General was where Dr. Chen worked. Where Jennifer's trap was waiting. They transferred me by ambulance. Marcus followed in his car. By the time I arrived, it was almost 8 p.m. Visiting hours were nearly over, but they'd let Marcus stay because his wife was so ill. Dr. Chen was on call that night. What a coincidence. She examined me, ordered more tests, admitted me to a private room in the ICU step-down unit. Told Marcus that my condition was serious but stable, that they'd monitor me overnight and reassess in the morning. You should go home, get some rest, she told him. There's nothing you can do here tonight. I'm not leaving my wife. We have very strict visiting hours in this unit. I'm afraid I have to insist. Marcus looked at me, lying in the bed with 4 lines and monitors beeping around me. I looked terrible, because I felt terrible. My act wasn't much of an act anymore. I'll be back first thing in the morning, he said, squeezing my hand. I love you, Sarah. Love you too, I managed to whisper. He left. I waited until I heard his footsteps fade down the hallway. Then I opened my eyes fully and looked at Dr. Chen. Phase 1 complete, she said. Get some real rest. Tomorrow's going to be intense. Jennifer came in an hour later with one of her detectives. They checked all the recording equipment, made sure everything was working properly. We got a warrant for his car and his house, Jennifer said. Officers are executing it right now while he's driving home. If he has any poison on him, in his car, anywhere we can access, we'll find it. What if he gets rid of it? What if he realizes something's wrong? He won't. Right now, he thinks everything is going according to plan. He thinks you're dying, that he's about to collect his payout. He has no reason to suspect anything. And tomorrow, you're going to code. You're going to flatline. The doctors are going to rush in, they're going to work on you, and then they're going to stabilize you. But for about 30 minutes, Marcus is going to think you're dead. And that's when we see who he really is. I barely slept that night. How could I? Tomorrow I was going to fake my own death to catch my husband confessing to my murder. If you're still watching, drop a comment letting me know you're here. This story gets even more intense. And definitely check out the description box for more stories like this. You won't believe what happens next. Marcus arrived at 7 a.m. sharp. He brought flowers, white lilies, the kind you bring to funerals. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. How is she? He asked Dr. Chen. Not good. Her organs are starting to fail. We're doing everything we can, but I have to be honest with you, Mr. Mitchell. The next 24 hours are critical. I watched Marcus's face carefully. He made all the right expressions: shock, fear, grief. But his eyes were calculating, planning. Can I see her? Of course. But she's not very responsive. He came into my room, pulled up a chair next to my bed, took my hand in his. Hey, baby, he said softly. I'm here. I'm right here. I didn't respond. I was supposed to be barely conscious, drifting in and out. Marcus sat there for an hour, checking his phone occasionally, watching the monitors, waiting. At 9:15 a.m., exactly as planned, the monitors started going crazy. My heart rate spiked, then dropped, then flatlined. The sound of the alarm was deafening. Dr. Chen came running in with 2 nurses. They pushed Marcus out of the way, started working on me. Chest compressions. Medications pushed through my 4. Shouted medical jargon. We're losing her. Push another amp of epi. Come on, Sarah, stay with us. Marcus stood in the corner, pressed against the wall, watching. And on his face was an expression I'd never seen before. Relief. Pure, undisguised relief. The doctors worked for 5 more minutes. Then Dr. Chen stepped back, looked at the clock, and said the words that would break any normal husband's heart. Time of death, 9:23 a.m. The monitors went silent. The nurses stopped moving. The room fell quiet except for the sound of Marcus's breathing. I'm so sorry, Dr. Chen said, turning to him. We did everything we could. Marcus stood there, staring at my dead body on the bed. The body that was actually very much alive, just heavily sedated and playing the role of my life. He started, his voice hoarse. I need a minute. Alone with her. Please. Dr. Chen hesitated, then nodded. Of course. Take your time. She and the nurses left. The door closed behind them. And then it was just Marcus and me. And the hidden cameras recording everything. Marcus walked slowly to my bedside. Looked down at me. And then, he smiled. It wasn't a sad smile. It wasn't a grieving smile. It was a triumphant smile. Finally, he whispered. Finally, it's done. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Hey, it's Marcus Mitchell. Policy number 7748923. Yeah, I need to file a claim. My wife just passed away. Organ failure. Yes, very sudden. Well, she'd been sick for a while, but, yes. No, I have the death certificate coming. How long does the payout usually take? He was calling the insurance company. Minutes after my death, he was calling about his payout. He hung up, made another call. Derek? Yeah, man, it's Marcus. Listen, Sarah just died. Yeah, this morning. I'm at the hospital now. I'm going to need some time off work, but probably not as much as you'd think. Maybe a week. 2? I just need to get through the funeral and handle the estate stuff. Yeah, thanks man. I appreciate it. He hung up again, looked at me, and then he started talking, like he couldn't help himself. You know what's funny, he said, his voice conversational now, like he was talking to a friend and not the woman he'd just murdered. You almost made it hard. That thing with Jenna, staying at her place, not eating as much as you should have been. I thought maybe you suspected something. But then you came back, started taking the vitamins like a good girl, and I knew I had you. He sat down, got comfortable, like he was settling in for a story. Richard was too suspicious. He asked too many questions, made too many connections. I had to accelerate his timeline, which was risky. But you were perfect. Trusting. Compliant. You believed everything I told you. You never questioned the vitamins, the special tea, any of it. My heart was pounding, but I kept perfectly still. Catherine was the prototype. I wasn't sure I could actually go through with it, you know? Killing someone isn't easy, even when it's slow, even when it's at a distance. But once I realized how simple it was, how easy it was to just help someone along to their natural end, well, it became a different kind of challenge. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, looking at my face. I genuinely liked you, Sarah. More than the others, actually. You were sweet, kind. We had good times together. But business is business, you know? And you were always just business. From that first day at the coffee shop when I saw you working on your laptop, alone, no wedding ring, and you mentioned your parents were dead, I knew you were perfect. No close family to ask inconvenient questions. Freelance work that could be explained away as stress. And you trusted so easily. He stood up, checked his watch. I should probably cry now. Look devastated. Play the grieving husband for the doctors. Then I'll go home, call a funeral home, start making arrangements. In 3 months, I'll have the insurance money. In 6 months, I'll put the house on the market. In a year, I'll be in a new city with a new identity, ready to start over. He walked toward the door, then turned back. Thanks for the $1 million, Sarah. Enjoy being dead. The door opened. Marcus's face transformed instantly. Grief, devastation, barely contained sobs. But the cameras had caught everything. Every word. Every smile. Every callous, calculated confession. Jennifer had been right. Killers like Marcus couldn't resist gloating when they thought they'd won. Dr. Chen came back in, put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. I'm so sorry for your loss. Is there anyone we can call for you? No, I need to go. I need to make some calls. Handle arrangements. Of course. We'll need you to sign some paperwork first, and we'll have to notify the medical examiner since this was an unexpected death. Something flickered across Marcus's face. Uncertainty. The medical examiner. Standard procedure for any death that occurs within 24 hours of hospital admission. Nothing to worry about, it's just protocol. They'll probably release the body within a few days for burial. Right. Of course. Protocol. He signed the paperwork with shaking hands. Not from grief, from the first stirrings of concern that maybe things weren't going exactly as planned. Marcus left the hospital at 10:45 a.m. At 10:46, I opened my eyes. Did we get it? I asked Dr. Chen. She smiled. Every single word. Jennifer came in 5 minutes later with her detective. That was perfect. Better than I could have hoped. We have him confessing to 3 murders, explaining his methodology, discussing the insurance fraud, all of it. So now what? Now we wait for him to go home. Our officers are already there with a search warrant. They'll find the poison. We got a tip that he keeps it in a safe in his office, hidden behind some books. And then we'll arrest him. I want to be there when you do. Jennifer shook her head. Sarah. I want to be there. I need to see his face when he realizes what happened. Please. She looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. Okay. But you stay in the car. And you stay quiet. Deal. Deal. They discharged me from the hospital through a back entrance. I changed out of the hospital gown into clothes Jenna had brought for me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like myself again. Weak, tired, still recovering from the poison I'd intentionally taken, but alive. So alive. We drove to my house, to the house I'd shared with a man who'd been planning to kill me since the day we met. There were 3 police cars in the driveway, all unmarked. Jennifer pulled up half a block away where we could see but wouldn't be immediately visible. They found the poison, she said, listening to something on her radio. In his office safe, exactly where we thought. Thallium sulfate, enough to kill a dozen people. They also found his journals, not just the one about you, but others. Documentation of Catherine Brewer's deterioration. Richard Voss's decline. He kept records of all of them, like trophies. Is he there? He just pulled up. I watched Marcus get out of his car. He looked tired, stressed, but there was a lightness to his step. Why wouldn't there be? He just successfully murdered his wife and was about to collect $1 million. He walked up to the front door and froze. The door was open. There were people inside his house. He pulled out his phone, probably about to call 911 to report a break-in, when Jennifer's detective stepped out onto the porch. Marcus Mitchell. Yes? What's going on? Why are you in my house? I'm Detective Rodriguez. We have a warrant to search your premises. He held up the paperwork. We found some items we'd like to discuss with you downtown. What items? I don't understand. My wife just died this morning. I just came from the hospital. Your wife is alive, Mr. Mitchell. Marcus went very still. What? Sarah Mitchell is alive and well. And she's been helping us build a case against you for murder, attempted murder, and insurance fraud. I watched the color drain from Marcus's face. Watched his mind race, trying to figure out what had happened, where his plan had gone wrong. I want to see her. I want to see Sarah. That's not going to happen. This is insane. You're making a mistake. My wife just died. I was there. I saw her. You saw her being sedated to mimic cardiac arrest so we could record your confession. Which we did. Every word, Mr. Mitchell. You confessed to murdering Catherine Brewer, Richard Voss, and attempting to murder Sarah Mitchell. You talked about the insurance fraud, the methodology, all of it. We have you on tape. Marcus's lawyer face came on then, the careful, calculated expression of someone who knew they were in trouble. I'm not saying anything else without my lawyer. Smart choice. Marcus Mitchell, you're under arrest for 3 counts of attempted murder, 2 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and insurance fraud. You have the right to remain silent. I watched them cuff him. Watched them put him in the back of a police car. Watched my husband, my would-be murderer, realize that he'd lost. And I felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, no joy. Just emptiness where my marriage used to be. Where my trust used to be. Where my future used to be. Jennifer turned to look at me. You okay? Ask me again in a year. Fair enough. Come on, let's get you out of here. You've got a long road ahead. She was right. The trial. The testimony. The media attention. The therapy. The rebuilding of my entire life. But I was alive to face it. And Marcus? Marcus was going to prison for the rest of his life. Sometimes revenge isn't sweet. Sometimes it's just necessary. The trial lasted 6 weeks. 6 weeks of sitting in a courtroom, watching Marcus in his expensive suit that his lawyer had probably told him to wear to look sympathetic and trustworthy. 6 weeks of listening to forensic experts explain how thallium works, how it damages the body, how he'd calculated the perfect dosage to kill slowly without triggering immediate suspicion. 6 weeks of having my entire life dissected in front of strangers. The prosecution was relentless, and Jennifer Morrison was brilliant. She built the case like a fortress, impossible to breach, impossible to explain away. The cameras had captured Marcus confessing. The lab tests had proven the poison. The financial records showed the insurance fraud. The emails revealed the premeditation. Marcus's defense attorney tried everything. He argued that Marcus had been under extreme stress, that he'd had a mental break, that the confession was taken under duress because he thought his wife had just died. He tried to paint Marcus as a grieving husband who'd said terrible things in a moment of psychological collapse. The jury didn't buy it. How could they, when the prosecution showed them Marcus's journals? When they heard testimony from Catherine Brewer's sister about how similar her death had been? When Amanda Voss took the stand and described watching her husband die the exact same way Marcus had tried to kill me? The defense tried to discredit me, suggesting I'd made the whole thing up, that I was mentally unstable, that I'd poisoned myself and blamed Marcus for attention. But Dr. Chen's testimony destroyed that theory. The medical evidence was undeniable. On week 5, the prosecution played the recording of Marcus's confession in the hospital room. I'd heard it before, obviously. I'd been there. But hearing it again in that courtroom, watching the jury's faces as they listened to Marcus cheerfully discussing my death like it was a business transaction, watching him tally up how much money I was worth dead. I had to leave the courtroom. Had to stand in the hallway, breathe, remind myself that I was alive and he was the one whose life was over. Jenna found me there, put her arms around me while I cried. I loved him, I said into her shoulder. For years, I loved him. How did I not see it? Because he's a psychopath, Sarah. A really, really good one. This isn't your fault. I should have known. There should have been signs. There weren't. That's what makes him so dangerous. He's charming, he's smart, he's patient. You can't blame yourself for being fooled by someone who's made a career out of fooling people. But I did blame myself. At least, part of me did. The part that kept replaying every moment of our relationship, looking for the cracks, for the moments when his mask had slipped. There had to have been some, right? Some tiny indication that the man I'd married was capable of murder? Maybe there had been. Maybe I'd just been too in love to notice. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found Marcus guilty on all counts. 2 counts of first-degree murder. 1 count of attempted murder. Multiple counts of insurance fraud, conspiracy, and a dozen other charges I couldn't keep track of. The judge sentenced him to 2 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. Marcus showed no emotion when the verdict was read. He just sat there, staring straight ahead, like none of this was really happening to him. Like he was watching a movie about someone else's life. As they led him out of the courtroom in handcuffs, he looked at me. Our eyes met for just a second. I thought I'd feel something in that moment. Satisfaction, closure, triumph. Something. I felt nothing. He was just a stranger in an orange jumpsuit. The man I'd married had never really existed. After the trial, the media descended. Everyone wanted my story. Morning shows, true crime podcasts, documentary filmmakers. They offered me money, exposure, the chance to tell my side. I said no to all of it. This wasn't a story. It was my life, and it wasn't entertainment. But I'm telling you now because someone needs to hear it. Someone out there might be living with a Marcus and not know it yet. Someone might see themselves in my story and realize they need to get out. If that's you, if any of this sounds familiar, please, check the description box below. There are resources, hotlines, people who can help. You don't have to wait until you're dying to escape. The insurance company tried to fight paying out to the victims' families. They claimed fraud, said the policies were invalid because they'd been obtained under false pretenses. It took another year of legal battles, but eventually Catherine Brewer's family and Amanda Voss both received settlements. Not the full policy amounts. Marcus had already spent some of that money, but enough. Enough for closure, at least financially. I never got any insurance money, obviously, since I'd survived. But I didn't need it. The house sold, I kept my half of our assets, and I rebuilt. Therapy helped. A lot. I found a therapist who specialized in trauma from intimate partner violence and spent 2 years working through what had happened to me. Not just the physical poisoning, but the psychological violation of having someone I trusted betray me so completely. You're experiencing a unique form of grief, my therapist told me during one session. You're grieving the death of your marriage, but you can't process it the way most divorced people do because your marriage was never real. Everything you're grieving is a lie. That's incredibly complicated. She was right. How do you mourn something that never existed? How do you recover from loving someone who was never actually there? Slowly, I learned. I learned that it was okay to have loved him, even knowing what I know now. I learned that being fooled didn't make me stupid, it made me human. I learned that survival isn't always triumphant and victorious. Sometimes it's just survival. And that's enough. Dr. Chen and I stayed in touch. She'd saved my life twice, once with that note, and again by helping us build the case that put Marcus away. I sent her flowers every year on the anniversary of the day she gave me that warning. Amanda Voss became an unlikely friend. We had coffee every few months, talked about our lives, compared notes on how we were healing. She'd started a foundation in Richard's name to help families of suspicious deaths get second opinions and independent investigations. I joined the board. Jenna never left my side through any of it. She'd been my rock, my safe place, my person who knew everything and loved me anyway. Some friendships are forged in fire, and ours had survived an inferno. Marcus sent me letters from prison. The first few I threw away without reading. But curiosity eventually got the better of me, and I opened one. It was 3 pages of justifications, explanations, and what I'm pretty sure he thought was an apology. He wrote about his difficult childhood, his need for control, his resentment of people who had what he didn't. He wrote about how killing had become addictive, how the planning and execution gave him a sense of power he'd never felt before. He wrote that he was sorry, but in a way that made it clear he was sorry he'd been caught, not sorry for what he'd done. I never wrote back. I just kept that letter as a reminder, not of him, but of the person I'd been when I married him. Trusting, optimistic, willing to believe the best in people. I didn't want to lose that person entirely, even though she'd nearly gotten me killed. 3 years after the trial, I met someone new. His name was David, and he was nothing like Marcus. Where Marcus had been calculated charm, David was genuine awkwardness. Where Marcus had been smooth confidence, David was self-deprecating humor. Where Marcus had made me feel like he was too good to be true, David made me feel like we were both just regular people trying to figure things out. I told him about Marcus on our 3rd date. Laid it all out, the poisoning, the trial, the media coverage, all of it. I figured if it was going to scare him off, better to know early. He'd listened without interrupting. Then he said, "That's horrifying, and I'm so sorry it happened to you. Thank you for trusting me enough to tell me." That was it. No wow, that's crazy. No treating me like I was broken or damaged, no weird fascination with the true crime aspect of it all. Just empathy. We took things slow. So slow. I needed to know I could trust my own judgment again before I could trust anyone else. David never pushed, never rushed me, never made me feel like I owed him anything. 2 years later, he proposed. I said yes. We got married in a small ceremony with just close friends and family. No big wedding, no elaborate ceremony. Just us, promising to love each other, knowing that sometimes love isn't enough but hoping that honesty and respect might be. I don't know if I'll ever fully recover from what Marcus did to me. Some days are easier than others. I still have nightmares sometimes, still feel a jolt of panic when I drink tea or take vitamins. I still catch myself analyzing David's behavior, looking for inconsistencies, waiting for the mask to slip. But mostly, I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I'm alive. I'm healthy. My body eventually cleared the thallium, and while there was some permanent damage, I'm functional. I'm happy, or at least I'm working toward it. And Marcus? Marcus is in a maximum security prison in Oregon, serving 2 life sentences. He'll never get out. He'll never hurt anyone else. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks about me. If he regrets what he did. If he's capable of actual remorse or if he's just angry he got caught. Mostly, though, I don't think about him at all. He's not my husband anymore. He's not my nightmare anymore. He's just a cautionary tale, a lesson in the fact that monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like the person who brings you tea before bed. Approx. 1,680 words. Chapter 8. The Other Victims. 6 months after Marcus's conviction, I got a call from Jennifer Morrison. "Sarah, we need to talk. Can you come to my office?" Something in her voice made my stomach drop. What's wrong? Did something happen with the case? Is Marcus appealing? No, nothing like that. But we've found something. Something big. I drove to her office immediately. Jennifer met me at the door, looking grave. We've been going through Marcus's storage unit. It took us this long to get the warrant and catalog everything, but, Sarah, it's worse than we thought. She led me to a conference room where boxes were stacked along the walls. Evidence boxes, all labeled with case numbers and dates. We found journals. Dozens of them. Going back 15 years. 15 years. Marcus had been murdering people for 15 years. How many? I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. We've identified 7 potential victims so far. 3 women, 4 men. All of them died of mysterious illnesses that were never properly explained. All of them had life insurance policies that paid out to Marcus in one way or another. 7 people. 7 people who trusted him, loved him, worked with him. 7 people who died slowly, painfully, while Marcus collected their money and moved on to his next target. Jennifer showed me the files. Each one was heartbreaking. Michelle Torres, age 29. Marcus's girlfriend before Catherine Brewer. She died of what was ruled as complications from lupus, except she'd never been diagnosed with lupus before she met Marcus. He'd been the beneficiary of her modest life insurance policy, $50,000. Daniel Reeves, age 41. A colleague at a previous pharmaceutical company where Marcus had worked before Meridian. Daniel had developed mysterious neurological symptoms, died 6 months later. Marcus had been his business partner in a failed startup. Insurance payout, $300,000. Jennifer Young, different Jennifer, age 36. Marcus's fiancée before Michelle. She died suddenly of organ failure after a 2-year illness. Marcus inherited her condo and her savings, about $200,000 total. The list went on. Each victim had the same pattern: mysterious illness, slow deterioration, sudden death. Each one had left Marcus with money. We're working with police departments in 4 different states to reopen these cases, Jennifer said. But it's going to be hard. Most of these people were cremated. The evidence is long gone. All we have are Marcus's journals documenting their deaths, and his financial records showing he profited from them. Can you charge him for these? We're trying. But without physical evidence, without witnesses, with some of these cases being over a decade old, it's complicated. We might be able to get a few more charges, but honestly, it doesn't matter much. He's already serving 2 life sentences. He's never getting out. I sat down heavily in one of the conference chairs. 7 people. 7 families who'd lost someone and never known why. 7 people who'd suffered and died alone, betrayed by someone they trusted. Their families need to know, I said. They deserve to know what happened. I agree. We're in the process of contacting them now. But Sarah, I wanted to warn you, this is going to hit the media hard. The story was already big with 3 victims. 7 is going to be a circus. She was right. Within a week, every news outlet in the country was running stories about Marcus Mitchell, the serial killer who'd murdered at least 7 people over 15 years and gotten away with it until I'd survived long enough to expose him. They called him the Poison Prince. The insurance killer. The patient murderer. I hated all of those names. They made him sound almost glamorous, like an interesting character in a thriller movie. He wasn't interesting. He was just evil. The media wanted to interview me again. I said no. But I did agree to meet with the victims' families. We gathered in a conference room at Jennifer's office, about 15 people, all connected by the fact that Marcus had murdered someone they loved. Michelle Torres's mother was there, a tiny woman in her 60s who looked like she'd been crying for years. Daniel Reeves's brother sat next to her, a tall man with the same haunted expression I recognized from my own mirror. Catherine Brewer's sister, Amanda Voss, and families representing each of Marcus's victims, all gathered in one room, united by unimaginable loss. Jennifer Morrison stood at the front, but before she could begin, Michelle's mother spoke. I knew something was wrong. Her voice was quiet but steady. Michelle was healthy. She was happy. Then she met that man, and 6 months later she could barely get out of bed. The doctors kept telling me it was lupus, but Michelle never had lupus. I told them to look harder, but they just kept giving her more medications that made her worse. Same with my brother, Daniel's brother said. Danny was the healthiest guy I knew. Ran marathons. Then suddenly he's having seizures, can't walk straight, losing his memory. They said it was early onset Alzheimer's at 41. I never believed it. Around the room, heads nodded. Everyone had the same story, a loved one who'd been healthy, then sick, then dead. Doctors who'd been baffled. Answers that had never quite made sense. I want you all to know, I said, my voice shaking, that I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I didn't figure it out sooner. I'm sorry that by the time I exposed him, it was too late for your families. I'm sorry that. Stop. Amanda Voss stood up. Sarah, you have nothing to apologize for. You survived. You fought back. You're the reason he's finally behind bars. Without you, he'd still be out there, and there would be more of us in this room. She's right, Jennifer Young's brother said. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 30. My sister died 12 years ago. I've spent 12 years thinking she just got unlucky, that life is random and cruel. But now I know. Now I have answers. That's because of you. But answers don't bring them back, I said. No, Michelle's mother agreed. But they give us peace. All these years, I've blamed myself. I thought I should have done more, pushed harder, been a better mother. Now I know there was nothing I could have done. That monster had a plan, and he was patient, and he was careful. Knowing that, it doesn't bring Michelle back, but it means I can stop torturing myself with what ifs. We spent 3 hours in that room, sharing stories about the people we'd lost. Not stories about their deaths, but about their lives. Who they'd been before Marcus. Their dreams, their quirks, the things that had made them laugh. Michelle had wanted to be a veterinarian. She'd volunteered at animal shelters every weekend. Daniel had been working on a novel. His brother still had the unfinished manuscript. Jennifer Young had been an incredible cook. She dreamed of opening her own restaurant. Richard Voss had built furniture in his garage. Amanda still had the dining table he'd made their first year of marriage. Catherine Brewer had painted. Watercolors. Mostly. Her sister showed me photos on her phone. Soft landscapes, delicate florals, images full of light and hope. These weren't just victims. They were people. Real people with real lives that Marcus had stolen for money. After that meeting, several of the families asked if they could stay in touch with me. We formed a support group of sorts, people connected by tragedy, trying to heal together. We met quarterly, sometimes just for coffee, sometimes for more formal grief counseling sessions. It helped. Not completely, nothing could completely heal this kind of wound, but it helped to be around people who understood. Who didn't need me to explain why I still flinched at the smell of certain teas, or why I had to check David's coffee before I drank it even though I knew logically he wasn't poisoning me. Jennifer Morrison managed to bring additional charges against Marcus for 3 of the 7 newly discovered murders. The evidence was stronger for those 3. There were witnesses who could testify about suspicious behavior, financial records that were particularly damning, and in one case, tissue samples that had been preserved and could be tested for thallium. Marcus was convicted again. 3 more life sentences, all consecutive. Not that it mattered, he was already going to die in prison. But it mattered to the families. It mattered to have it official, to have a judge say definitively that yes, your loved one was murdered, and yes, the person responsible is being punished. The civil suits came next. All 7 families, plus me, filed wrongful death suits against Marcus's estate. There wasn't much, he'd spent most of his murder money on maintaining his lifestyle, but what little there was got divided among us. I donated my portion to Amanda's foundation and to a non-profit that provided free toxicology testing for families who suspected poisoning. Meridian Pharmaceuticals faced their own reckoning. It came out during the investigation that their chemical inventory system had been laughably insecure. Marcus had been stealing controlled substances for 15 years, and nobody had noticed because the logging system was easy to manipulate and audits were infrequent. They settled multiple lawsuits, paid millions in damages, and completely overhauled their security protocols. 3 executives were fired. The company's reputation took a massive hit. Good. They deserved it. Their negligence had enabled a serial killer. 2 years after the trial, Dateline wanted to do an episode about the case. I'd turned down every media request until then, but the producer promised they'd focus on the victims, who they'd been, what they'd lost, how their families were healing. And they'd include resources for people who might be in similar situations. I agreed, on the condition that several of the other families would be interviewed too, and that would have input on the final edit. The episode was called The Patient Killer: How a Serial Poisoner Hid in Plain Sight for 15 Years. It was hard to watch. Seeing Marcus's face on screen, hearing his voice from the recorded confession, reliving those months when I'd thought I was dying, it brought everything back. But it also felt important. Educational, even. After it aired, Jennifer Morrison's office was flooded with calls. People who'd had family members die of mysterious illnesses. People who suspected poisoning but didn't know how to prove it. People who just wanted to say thank you for bringing awareness to a type of crime that's more common than most people realize. Several of those calls led to actual investigations. 2 cases were particularly similar to what Marcus had done: slow poisoning over months, life insurance motives, medical professionals who'd missed the signs. Those investigations are still ongoing, but it looks like at least one of them will result in an arrest. So something good came from the horror. Not enough to balance the scales. 7 dead, countless lives destroyed, but something. Dr. Chen and I started giving talks together at medical conferences. She'd explain the clinical signs of poisoning that doctors often miss, and I'd talk about what it's like to be the patient nobody believes. We'd show how the 2 perspectives need to work together. Doctors need to listen to patients, and patients need to trust their instincts when something feels wrong. The medical system failed Sarah multiple times, Dr. Chen would say in these presentations. And it failed all of Marcus's other victims. We have to do better. We have to be willing to think beyond the obvious diagnoses and consider the possibility of intentional harm. I'd add, and patients have to know that if your gut is telling you something's wrong, if your situation doesn't make sense, if the person who's supposed to love you seems just a little too perfect or a little too controlling, trust yourself. Ask questions. Get second opinions. Don't let anyone gaslight you into thinking you're paranoid or crazy. It became my mission, in a way. Not just surviving, but using my survival to help others. Amanda and I expanded her foundation. We started a hotline for people who suspected poisoning, staffed by volunteers who'd been through similar situations. We funded independent toxicology testing for families who couldn't afford it. We pushed for legislation requiring better chemical inventory controls at pharmaceutical companies and research facilities. It wasn't enough to just punish Marcus. We had to make sure there couldn't be another Marcus. 5 years after my ordeal began, David and I had a daughter. We named her Hope, because that's what she represented. Hope that life could still be beautiful, that trust could still exist, that love could still be real. I was terrified during the entire pregnancy. Terrified something would go wrong, that I'd somehow pass trauma to my child, that I'd be too damaged to be a good mother. My therapist and I worked through those fears, session after session. You survived something horrific, she told me. That doesn't make you broken. It makes you strong. And your daughter is going to grow up knowing that her mother fought back, that she didn't accept being a victim, that she turned her pain into purpose. That's a gift. Hope is 3 now. She's happy, healthy, full of life. She knows nothing about Marcus, she's too young, but someday she'll need to know. Someday I'll have to tell her that the reason Mommy sometimes gets quiet and sad, the reason Mommy is so careful about what she eats and drinks, the reason Mommy works so hard to help other people, it's because of something terrible that happened before she was born. But I'll also tell her about the good that came from it. About Dr. Chen's bravery in giving me that note. About Amanda's determination to seek justice for Richard. About Jenna's unconditional friendship. About all the families who came together to support each other. About the laws that changed and the lives that were saved. I'll tell her that even in the darkest times, there are people who will fight for you. And sometimes, you have to be the one who fights for yourself. Marcus will die in prison. He's filed multiple appeals, all of which have been denied. He'll never breathe free air again. He'll never hurt anyone else. And me. I'm free. Free from him, free from fear, free to build a life that's actually mine. Some nights, I still dream about that crumpled sticky note. Run from your husband now. Those 7 words that saved my life. I keep it framed in my office now, a reminder that sometimes salvation comes from unexpected places. Sometimes it comes from a doctor who barely knows you but cares enough to risk her career. Sometimes it comes from friends who believe you when no one else does. Sometimes it comes from inside yourself, from the strength you didn't know you had until you needed it. This is my story. The story of how I discovered my husband was trying to kill me, and how I destroyed him before he could finish the job. If you're reading this and something feels wrong in your life, if someone you love seems just a little too controlling or a little too invested in your illness, if your gut is screaming that something isn't right, trust it. Get help. Get out. You deserve to survive. And you deserve more than survival. You deserve to thrive. Asterisk for resources and support. Contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline or the Poison Help Hotline. If you suspect poisoning, seek immediate medical attention and request specialized toxicology testing. Your life might depend on it. 7 years after everything began, I got a letter that I hadn't expected. It wasn't from Marcus. I'd stopped reading his letters years ago, and eventually they'd stopped coming. This was from someone else entirely. Someone named Elizabeth Chen. No relation to Dr. Chen, the letter clarified immediately. Elizabeth was writing to me because she'd seen the Dateline episode. Because she recognized something in Marcus's pattern. Because she thought her mother might have been one of his victims. My mother, Linda Chen, died in 2009, the letter read. She'd been dating a man named Marcus for about a year. She got sick very suddenly with what doctors said was an aggressive autoimmune disease. She died within 6 months. The man she'd been dating, Marcus, disappeared shortly after her funeral. We never heard from him again. I was only 16 at the time, and in my grief, I didn't think to question it. But now, watching your story, I can't stop thinking about the similarities. I called Elizabeth immediately. She was 31 now, a nurse in Seattle, and she'd spent the last month since watching the Dateline episode digging through her mother's old papers. What she'd found was chilling. My mother had changed her life insurance beneficiary to Marcus about 3 months before she died, Elizabeth said. I found the paperwork in a box of her things. I'd never known about it. The policy was for $200,000. Did Marcus collect it? I don't know. I've been trying to find out, but it was so long ago, and I don't have access to my mother's financial records. She didn't have a will, and everything was handled by my grandmother, who's since passed away. I put Elizabeth in touch with Jennifer Morrison. If Linda Chen was indeed one of Marcus's victims, it would bring his known body count to at least 8. Maybe more that we still hadn't discovered. Jennifer's investigation confirmed it. Marcus had collected on Linda Chen's life insurance in early 2010. He'd done it under a slightly different name, Marcus Michaels instead of Marcus Mitchell, which explained why it hadn't come up in earlier searches. He'd been even more careful back then, more cautious about covering his tracks. Linda was his second victim, as far as we could tell. His first had been a woman named Susan Park, who died in 2007. After Susan, there'd been Linda. Then Jennifer Young, Michelle Torres, Catherine Brewer, Daniel Reeves, Richard Voss, and finally me. 8 murders over 15 years. Nearly 9, if I hadn't figured it out in time. The pattern was clear now. Marcus would find someone, usually someone isolated, without close family or strong support systems, and he'd become exactly what they needed. Attentive boyfriend. Supportive partner. Eventually, loving husband. He'd wait at least a year to establish the relationship as legitimate. Then he'd take out life insurance, start the poisoning, and wait. After each death, he'd move to a new city, change his name slightly, find new employment, and start over. He'd kept meticulous records of everything, not because he felt guilty or wanted to confess, but because he was proud of his work. He was documenting his success. "This is who he is," my therapist explained during one of our sessions after Linda's case came to light. "Marcus is what we call an organized serial killer with strong psychopathic traits. He doesn't kill for emotional reasons or in moments of passion. He kills because it serves his purposes: financial gain, intellectual challenge, sense of power and control. The victims aren't people to him. They're means to an end." Did he ever love any of us? Even a little? No. People like Marcus don't experience love the way you and I do. They understand it conceptually, can mimic it perfectly, but they don't feel it. Every relationship in his life was transactional. You, and all the others, were investments that he expected to pay off. That should have hurt. It did hurt, actually. But it also helped, in a strange way. Knowing that Marcus had never loved me meant I could stop torturing myself with questions about where it had gone wrong, what I could have done differently, whether some part of him had been real. None of it had been real. Not one single moment. Elizabeth and I became friends. She joined our support group, found comfort in connecting with other families who understood. She'd spent 15 years thinking her mother had just gotten unlucky with a terrible disease. Now she knew the truth, and while the truth was painful, it was also freeing. "I'm angry," she told me over coffee one afternoon. "I'm so angry that I lost 15 years with the truth. That my mother's been dead for this long and I only just found out she was murdered. But I'm also grateful. Grateful that she'll be remembered as his victim, not just as someone who died young. Grateful that her name will be included in the documentation of his crimes. Grateful that you survived to tell all of our stories." The final legal proceedings happened that fall. Marcus was charged with Linda's murder and Susan Park's murder. The evidence was strong: his journals, the insurance payouts, testimony from people who'd known the victims and remembered Marcus by his various names. He pled guilty this time. Maybe because he was tired of fighting. Maybe because he knew there was no point, he was never getting out anyway. Maybe because, on some level, he wanted credit for all of it. The judge gave him 2 more consecutive life sentences. 10 total now. As if one hadn't been enough. "Marcus Mitchell," the judge said at sentencing, "you are one of the most calculating, cold-blooded killers this court has ever seen. You didn't kill in moments of rage or passion. You killed with premeditation, with planning, with complete disregard for human life. You turned murder into a business model. There is no place for you in civilized society, and you will spend the rest of your days behind bars." Marcus showed no reaction. He just stood there, expressionless, like this was all happening to someone else. As they led him out, he looked at me one last time. I was sitting in the gallery, flanked by David on one side and Amanda on the other. Our entire support group had come: Elizabeth, Daniel's brother, Michelle's mother, representatives from all the families. We'd all survived him, in one way or another. Some of us literally, some of us by refusing to let grief destroy us. Marcus's eyes met mine, and for just a second, I thought I saw something. Recognition? Regret? Hatred? Then he was gone, and I realized I didn't care what he felt. He didn't matter anymore. After the sentencing, all 10 families, the 8 who'd lost someone and Jenna and David representing the life I'd rebuilt, went to dinner together. We toasted to the people we'd lost. We cried a little. We laughed more than expected. "This is the end, isn't it?" Michelle's mother said. "The legal part, I mean. It's finally over." "It's over," Jennifer Morrison confirmed. She joined us, no longer just our prosecutor but our friend. "Marcus will die in prison. He'll never hurt anyone again. And all of you can finally close this chapter and move forward." But could we? Could any of us really move forward from something like this? I thought about that question a lot over the following months. What does moving forward look like when someone you loved tried to kill you? When someone you trusted stole years from your life? For me, moving forward meant choosing, every single day, not to let Marcus define my story. Yes, he'd poisoned me. Yes, he'd betrayed me in the worst way imaginable. Yes, he tried to kill me and nearly succeeded. But he'd failed. I'd survived. And I'd built a life that was fuller and richer than anything I'd had with him. I had David, who loved me with a quiet steadiness that was the opposite of Marcus's performative affection. I had Hope, who reminded me every day why survival mattered. I had work that gave my pain purpose. I had friends who'd been forged in trauma and were all the stronger for it. I had myself, scarred, yes, but whole. Damaged, yes, but healing. Different than I'd been before Marcus, but not broken. Never broken. On the 10th anniversary of the day Dr. Chen gave me that note, I organized a celebration. Not a somber memorial, but an actual celebration. All the families came. We rented out a community center, brought food, invited everyone who'd been part of the journey, lawyers, investigators, doctors, journalists who'd covered the story respectfully. Dr. Chen gave a speech about the importance of trusting your instincts and speaking up when something feels wrong. Amanda talked about turning grief into action. Elizabeth shared her mother's favorite recipe and we all toasted to Linda's memory. And I stood up in front of everyone and said what I'd been wanting to say for 10 years. Marcus Mitchell tried to erase us. 8 women and men who trusted him, loved him, believed in him. He tried to reduce us to statistics, to insurance payouts, to entries in his sick little journal. But he failed. He failed because we refused to be erased. We refused to let our loved ones be forgotten. We refused to let him win. I looked around the room at all these faces, survivors, all of us, in different ways. This is what victory looks like. Not revenge, not hatred, not letting trauma consume us. This, right here, right now, this community, this healing, this refusal to stay broken. This is how we win. Everyone raised their glasses. We toasted to survival, to justice, to the long, messy, beautiful process of rebuilding lives that someone else tried to destroy. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, David and I sat on our porch swing while Hope slept inside. The Portland night was cool and clear, full of stars. Do you ever wish it had never happened? David asked. That you'd never met him, never married him, never gone through any of it. I thought about that. 10 years ago, I would have said yes immediately. 5 years ago, probably still yes. But now, no, I said. Which sounds insane, I know. He tried to kill me. He succeeded in killing 8 other people. If I could undo it, if I could bring those people back, obviously I would in a heartbeat. But for myself? No. Because everything good in my life now came from surviving him. I wouldn't have this work that matters. I wouldn't have this community. I wouldn't have you. I wouldn't be the person I am now, someone who's strong enough to survive anything. You were always strong enough. Maybe. But I didn't know it until I had to be. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars, thinking about everything that had led us to this moment. What do you think he's doing right now? David asked. Who cares? I said, and meant it. Marcus Mitchell was irrelevant. He was a name in a prison database, a cautionary tale in criminology classes, a monster who'd been caught and caged. But me. I was free. I was alive. I was home. Asterisk, this story is a work of fiction, but the warning is real. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship or suspect poisoning, please seek help immediately. Contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline 1-800-799-7233 or the Poison Help Hotline 1-800-222-1222. Trust your instincts. Your life may depend on it. Asterisk for more information about recognizing signs of poisoning, coercive control, and intimate partner violence, Resources are available through the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the American Association of Poison Control Centers.